Hi, this is Nathan Pierce from F5 talking to you today about Super-Netops Principles and Practices. Why do anything? So why am I talking to you about Super-Netops today? Well, Elon Musk sums it up brilliantly. You can't have people in the production line itself, otherwise you'll automatically drop to people speed. Keep that in mind when we go through what's happening with technology silos within organizations and why we still have significant delays in getting productivity improving or revenue generating services out deployed in production and doing what they were designed to do. So the automotive industry has kind of worked this out already. They're realizing, you know what, you can't have people in the middle of the production line itself. They can only be there to support the production line. And that's how we stop dropping to people speed. What's causing this need? What's causing this demand, like what we saw in the automotive industry, to come to our technology competencies within customers? Well, applications are what generate the revenue and improve productivity. So when the deployment of an application is stalled in any way because we need to raise a ticket and wait for someone in an infrastructure silo to bring up some storage or to add some load balancing or to configure a firewall, well, suddenly the business gets very angry because the ready service is sitting there not doing what it was designed to do. It's not generating revenue. It's not making sales staff more efficient and effective. It's not making back office get things done quicker. So the spotlight is very much on infrastructure to become part of the automation of app deployment. In fact, there are organizations now that are striking vendors off of their procurement lists because they are not meeting programmable infrastructure expectations. So this is significant, this shift in influence. The infrastructure silos are not safe. They need to be working out how to solve this problem of faster time to market and faster delivery. So what is it that actually needs to change? Well, the deployment automation is not new. Developers have been automating for a long time. In fact, developers don't like to ever do anything twice. They do it once and they've already worked out how they could script that to never do it again. However, how far they can automate has been limited by operational boundaries. So when they can only control the service that they're writing, the code that they're writing, well, all they could automate was the pushing of that service, its compiling, its testing, and its deployment onto a server. This has changed. A lot of the DevOps culture has mean that they can now also deploy and automate the creation of the server and the configuration of the web server and then dropping their code on top of that. Developers want to automate everything. This shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, the more they automate, the quicker they get their service out and can move on to the next one. In fact, this is a common philosophy within development circles. Go away or I will replace you with a very small shell script. As amusing as that is, unfortunately, some things just cannot be replaced by a shell script, if only. Isn't this DevOps that I'm talking about? Well, let's just quickly review what DevOps is and is not. Contrary to many things published on the internet, DevOps is not a technology or tools or a person. DevOps is a culture oriented around reducing operational friction. That is really important. DevOps is not containers. DevOps is not automation. It's reducing operational friction. It's development and operations working together. Instead of development writing code and throwing it over the fence, it's operations then turning around and being very unimpressed and trying to get it working. It's the two working together so that there are no surprises, that they can automate the entire process start to finish. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of opinions on DevOps principles and practices. By all means, hit pause if you want to read all these. You'll see the word continuous is in there a lot. Continuous, collaboration, self-service. The principles, even more of an eye chart. Again, continuous integration, continuous delivery. It's all about taking people out of the system and allowing the system to run itself, supporting the system, not being the system. Where's NetOps in all of this? Well, NetOps does have a place in DevOps. In fact, there's an ops in NetOps. It's part of ops. So why aren't we seeing the networking being more of this DevOps culture to reduce operational friction? Well, It's because it's complicated. There's a reason there's an entire NetOps industry, and there's an entire NetOps engineering expertise and network architecture expertise out there, and that it's not just a subset of another team. There's a lot that goes on. However, it's typically outside most developers' wheelhouse. Now, you'll see things like, for example, something I saw on Reddit recently, a developer claiming that NetOps isn't needed anymore because most networking happens within a Linux container. That was highly amusing and not a giant surprise for someone who works within a Linux container. They're clearly not aware of all the systems and services that are put in place in front of applications to protect them and make sure they're operating quickly and with great resilience, especially for the advanced layer 4 to 7 services like that of F5. Let's take a web application firewall policy. That is definitely not something that's just typically floating about in a Linux container. They need our help, though, to bring these two worlds together. That is for sure. So there's a skills gap problem. That's why it's not happened yet. You got NetOps way over here. This is typically managed and operated mouse keyboard, GUIs, CLIs. Some people have done a bit of scripting to help automate some of these things. Some have even gone into templatization of their workloads just to accelerate a bit further. And then way down the other end, we've got development runtimes, we've got developer tool chains, series of tools together to automate an entire process. We've declarative interfaces. These worlds are very far apart. This is a long way, the skills gap. So what do? Well, we can't get developers to take a few years out to learn all of the networking skills. I mean, developers need to be focused on generating apps and services that either generate revenue or improve productivity. As soon as you take that off, you're no longer generating revenue, more revenue, and improving productivity further. So we have to start at the other end. We need to get NetOps, these people on the keyboards and the mouse, closer to the developer process. So all that expertise about networking, we need to get that out of keyboard implementation and focus more on APIs that are developer toolchain friendly. So we need to reduce the skill gap, and this is where Super-Netops come in. It's about enablement, doing the same job, taking all that expertise, but doing it in a very DevOps culture manner. So what are the principles and practices of Super-Netops to support this DevOps culture movement? Apply systems thinking. So anyone who's worked in any sizable organization has probably experienced a change management window. These things typically used to happen on a Sunday night at 1 a.m. when user traffic was low. You would have people from security, from network, from infrastructure ops, from server platform team. You'd have some app guys on there. And you had typically like a 2-hour window to get all of the changes in for all of the different teams, one after another, serially. And then if anything went wrong, you would have to back out of the change management window, and the next one might not be for 2 weeks. Well, that put a serious downer on getting new generating services or productivity improving services out deployed and doing what they were meant to do, generating revenue or improving productivity. Systems thinking is about abandoning that entire thing. So instead of project-based thinking, where a project has a start and then a finish date, well, the system never ends. You constantly focus on improving the system so that when the developer deploys, the system itself implements the security policies, it generates the storage that's required, it puts the load balancing in place, it applies the firewall security policy and the web application firewall security policy. But no person is a system. Taking people out of the way, and the people that used to do the button pushing are now doing the button creating. That is the system itself. Once you've adopted system thinking, the focus, automation is not about doing anyone out of a job. It's about shifting focus from specific tasks to the continuous improvement of the system itself. Now, this is a philosophy, it's a culture change, philosophical approach has to be altered to adopt this. However, to give an example, Etsy at GitHub Universe 2 years ago gave a great talk about how they adopt failure. Any developer that deploys some code or alters an automation deployment script that ends up causing an outage, they do a public announcement within the company. They email everybody and explain what the outage was that they caused, what functionality that created that problem, and then what they did to make sure that no one else could cause that problem to happen again. And that is embraced. That is encouraged that people take this approach. They all focus on the system itself, but the result of this being a far more robust system. Instead of individual snowflake deployments where you do one project at a time, the next project doesn't get addressed until the first one's done and out of the way. Systems thinking is about continuously improving and creating a more robust self-service system. Lastly, collaborate. You can't create a system within a silo. The system is not intra-silo, it's extra-silo. So it's only through taking this in continuous improvement culture to other teams that are part of the system of deployment. So involving what you're building for your system with the developers, with the other operations functions, infrastructure operations, storage operations, and everyone working together and understanding, well, where's the handoff? Where does your automation start and end? And what do you need from me for your next part of the automation to kick off? And then creating this tool chain that is all-encompassing from start to finish. Only then can you realize Elon's vision of people getting out of the way of the production line itself. So then we have the practices that are to support these principles. So a Super-Netops engineer or architect must focus on declarative interfaces, not taking every individual command and putting it in the developer's toolchain, but instead creating declarative interfaces that can be called. The great example here is instead of handing all of the ingredients to the developer and telling them to make their own sandwich, giving them a drive-through menu and saying, you know what, just pick the flavor that you want today. This is what we mean when we talk about declarative interfaces. And that supports a continuous delivery process. You can't just throw all the ingredients at them and expect them to be a chef with ingredients they've never seen before. Execute on self-service models. Well, if you're architecting around declarative interfaces and continuous delivery pipelines, then that is very supportive of a self-service model where you are no longer the system. You are supporting the system. The system itself is self-running. And this can't be done without communication and collaboration across the silos. And lastly, again on this collaborate theme, by collaborating, you're going to get shorter feedback loops. You're going to fail quicker. And again, like that Etsy culture I mentioned, once you fail quicker, but you understand why, because you're all communicating together when a deployment's going on. People are using chat ops a lot to get past these silos where everybody's member across a system from each individual team, they're all in the same channel within a chat system. And in fact, the systems themselves are reporting directly into the chat channel. So when the app deployment script finishes, it publishes to the chat system saying, I've just finished running. Everybody knows then, oh, I better just have a quick look to see that all is fine. So people not having to be waited on for that to happen, the feedback loop itself is actually presenting information within the teams. So ChatOps is a great thing to look at for helping break some of these silos down. What's F5 doing about all of this? Well, F5's doing a lot. Glad you asked. We have a big announcement at Agility this year in Chicago about the Super-Netops program. One of the key first things we're releasing, this program's been in development for over a year, but we're delivering a self-service online training beta. We have an excellent training course. We've trained many hundreds of people. This course was originally developed by Hitesh Patel and has been enhanced and improved by many cloud SSEs, and even customers and partners that have gone through this course have committed back to it. Well, the problem was we had to have F5 people there to deliver the course. It wasn't self-service. Well, now we're going to give it to the world and we're going to give it away for free. So the beta of this is going to be run at Agility, and this is what it takes to be to change an industry, to make this Super-Netops persona, this evolved engineer, a reality. We've got F5 marketing behind that are committed to making Super-Netops something big. This is how we bring all of that awesome F5 big IP knowledge that's out there and keep it relevant in the next evolution of how businesses are deploying apps and services. We're also going to be doing far more participation in online developer communities, not just F5's Dev Central, but others like Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange. So we're going to get out there and break out of our own silos and start meeting these people on their own turf. In addition to F5 community programs like, doing meetups, etc. Instead of an ad hoc one-off, we'll have a program around how we go to meetups and how we share our expertise with people. And this is supported with the F5 Developer Evangelism programs. So Developer Evangelism isn't just speaking at conferences, it's also about sharing code online on GitHub and actually look, these are best practices of how to use Ansible, or this is the best practice of how to integrate with ServiceNow to create a sign-off process. So we've got a lot of work coming on Developer Evangelism as well. So that was the short version of F5 Super-Netops program. You're going to hear a lot about it. Stay in touch, read everything you can, and be an ambassador for F5's movement into automation and orchestration of layer 4 to 7 services. Thanks for listening. Bye.